A contentious few days in Adamawa State finally had some direction on Tuesday, as the Independent National Electoral Commission declared incumbent governor and the candidates of the People's Democratic Party, Ahmadu Fintiri, winner of the governorship election. The first round of the polls ended in a stalemate, with supplementary elections held over the weekend. A dramatic announcement by the state's resident electoral commissioner also threatened to create a crisis for the Electoral Commission as it sought to bring the election to a logical conclusion. After that announcement, INEC, in what was a very swift reaction, rejected the announcement and subsequently has asked for the prosecution of the REC. Aisha Binani of the APC, who was declared winner by the REC, had gone ahead to make a victory speech, even when there were questions as to that declaration. This election has left in its wake the suspension of the state's resident electoral commissioner, that is, and the transfer of a police commissioner as well. Dr. Abiola Akiyode-Afolabi, election expert and founder, Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, is with me via phone now. Dr. Akiyode-Afolabi, welcome to Politics HQ. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, good evening. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start with looking at this election in terms of how it stacks up with the elections overall for Nigeria in this election cycle. There are a lot of eyes on Adamawa State, given the criticisms that INEC has faced from the presidential through to the governorship and what was now basically an off-cycle election. How do you think INEC did when it came to the supplementary elections in Adamawa State?
Well, I think that INEC tried its best to ensure that the mandates of the people of Adamawa prevailed, particularly on the supplementary election. It's been a very long road, and Adamawa, it's a very significant election. One is the place where the presidential candidate of the PDP is from, and secondly, it's also having an incumbent, and thirdly, also because there's a woman running who had the potential of winning the election. So it was more or less like all eyes on Adamawa even before the supplementary election. So there was a lot of tension, and there was a burden of people, and a lot of issues, also scandals and all of that, going on in Adamawa. So the supplementary election, INEC role, if analyzed, particularly INEC at the national level, took the best position in that regard. Okay.
So it was the returning officer for the state, Professor Mohammed Millet, on Tuesday, who declared Governor Fintiri winner. It was also on Tuesday that INEC said it had asked the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, to draw the attention of the appointing authority to the behavior of the state's resident electoral commissioner, Hudu Yunusa Ari, who controversially declared Binani as governor-elect. Now, there have been conversations and concerns about INEC's impartiality throughout many of the elections that the electoral umpire has seen itself proceed with. When you look at what transpired, particularly with the REC at the time, what do you make of that? Does that continue to increase the criticisms and some of the issues that INEC has been facing in recent times?
Well, apparently the REC acted illegally and unlawfully. The REC doesn't have the authority to declare. It's only the returning officer that is expected to do that. Now, that brings to fore the fact that it's also important for INEC to look inward. And I think looking at this last election and some of the things that came up in the election at different times, and more than any other time, a lot of people assumed that this election was compromised at different levels, whether with money, whether with influence, whether with power. So it gives a huge burden on INEC, and I believe that INEC needs to go back and restructure its internal mechanism and try to define who is standing and representing INEC, at different levels. I cannot just phantom how a REC would go and do what he has done. I think it's really out of order, and he really needs to explain to the whole world what really happened and how he arrived at what he has done, on that day. It was embarrassing, to everyone in particular. For those who walk around women, we are looking forward, to have a woman governor, and such a thing was happening, around that decision.
So when we look at the appeal that INEC made to the appointing authority, in this situation, the appointing authority is the presidency, is the president. INEC has asked for his sack, his arrest, and his prosecution. What do you think should be the appropriate response that Nigerians are getting from the president? Because this is something that happened in the full glare of Nigerians. It's something that we're continuing to talk about, particularly on social media. And it's something, unfortunately, that has now become a black stain for INEC. So what should we be expecting as a response from the presidency?
I assume that the INEC also have a procedure, when they have an hearing officer in this manner. And the president who had appointed the REC also has a responsibility to respond to this issue, especially when there is a call, towards him to take a decision on what happened, so that he is not also seen, as an accomplice, especially in an election where fingers have been pointed at, all the people in the political space, particularly in the APC, which is the ruling party. It would be important for, the president to play air in this regard. But I believe that INEC has a procedure that, they're expected to take when, they have this kind of situation. And I would rather say that such, procedure should be the adequate procedure to be used in this regard.
Interesting enough, we saw that the APC's candidate, Aisha Binani, attempted to stop the declaration of Fintiri by filing an ex parte motion. Now, in her suit, the APC candidate insisted that she was declared winner of the governorship election after the collation process was completed. She argued that INEC had no powers to cancel or declare a declaration which has been made as null and void. When you look at what she was attempting to do and what might end up being part of a suit, or at least a petition on this election, if she decides to go forward, do you think she really has a leg to stand on, that because the REC was in place, he declared her winner, therefore she should be the winner, and it's not up to INEC then to remove him and say that that declaration was wrong?
Well, someone had declared her, which is correct. That's why it is not. It's unlawful for that, to be done, by the resident electoral commissioner. She has a right to challenge, the election in court, and that's exactly what she's doing. So I do not see that. I can't say anything wrong in that. For her to be able to go to court to challenge it, she is basing it, on some kind of procedure or legal. She must have some kind of legal package. She must have good, legal advice. But I have scanned through Section 149, Section 64, 65, and I really can't see if it's in particular the supplementary election. There might be other issues, outside of that supplementary election that Binani might be able to raise, particularly what happened on March 18, which, were issues which have been raised even before then. And I can recall that there were also calls for a general review of that election on March 18. So if that's what Binani is raising, I think that the court is the only place to go. So, and if she has issues with the supplementary election, the court is also the place to go. But she was actually declared by the REC, so though illegal, but the court is where, she should go.
So it's not just the illegal declaration by the state's resident electoral commissioner and the interesting victory speech that the APC's candidate gave that made the headlines. It was also the issue around security. So when the results were declared inconclusive the first time round, we saw some violence and chaotic scenes in Adamawa. But one of the big issues we also saw this weekend was accusations that security agents were complicit in whatever was going on. And you, of course, had mentioned the conversation around the nexus of influence and power, and even Binani being a first possible governorship candidate, female governor here in Nigeria. So before the announcement of the winner, we saw the Inspector General of Police, Usman Baba, ordered that the Commissioner of Police on Election Duty in Adamawa State, Mohammed Bade, withdraw from the state with immediate effect. And just a few hours ago, we heard that the Commandant General of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, Ahmed Abubakar Aldi, has summoned the Adamawa State Commandant of the Corps, Mohammed Bello, to the national headquarters to also explain the role he played in the elections in Adamawa State. Should we be seeing these transfers and this summons sort of as confirmation that there was definitely something happening with the security agencies in the state during this election?
Well, I think the general election, not only is very much in the election, complete behavior of the state security, and even watching what happened with the wreck, because there are, policemen also, on set when what happened with the wreck declaration was being made, what we saw on the television, and so it looks like there was some kind of security support for him, even at that time. These are issues of concern to Nigerians, particularly the power of incumbency, and I mean at the national level, to the incumbent president at the national level, to control the security, and the fact that what you see oftentimes is that the security is being controlled in favor of the ruling party, and it looks like they have a script which they are playing and acting, in favor of the ruling party, which is quite condemnable. And when you see things happening, subsequently, then you begin to wonder, whether there's actually division of power, in this country. And that's really a huge cause for concern for anyone who is looking at what is going on, in the country.
So let's look at one of the points you highlighted earlier that had many people putting an eye on Adamawa State. So Aisha Binani, running under the All Progressives Congress, would have been Nigeria's first duly elected female governor if she had won. And for some, there was a lot riding on this election for that simple fact. There were barely any female governorship candidates in this last election cycle. And if we expand to look at the National Assembly numbers, we also see that Nigeria is not doing very well at that at all. The numbers, in fact, seem to have declined in the past one or two election cycles. Why do we continue to see a struggle for what is Africa's largest economy, the most populous black nation on earth, when it comes to getting more women into elective positions?
Well, for the first time, I must say that women organizations were excited that we had the formidable candidates in Adamawa State coming up and running for that election. And we had also looked at the antecedents of the candidates. We realized that the candidates also had some kind of popularity, which must have even led to, because if you look at the way, it's not also very significant. So we were hopeful that maybe that would happen. However, especially looking at the kind of number that we have been having since 1999, there's zero governorship, women, holding governorship position. I think the only opportunity we have had was in a number of states when the PHQ was impeached and a female governor emerged, for a period of maybe 6 months or thereabouts. So, and of course, we also saw a lot of things, especially because it's happening from the northern part of Nigeria, and that was also significant in a way because that's a place where there is high illiteracy, and that's the place where about 60% of women cannot read and write. And that is also a place where there is a lot of religious and traditional bias more than any other part, of the country. So that would have been, a win that would have, if legally done, would have been celebrated. But however, we also understand the fact that, there were women groups who were also converted, especially with the constitutional reform process, asking for, affirmative action, at different levels before the election. There's no way we can get to increasing women's political representation at the executive position in Nigeria if we don't legislate it. Legislation becomes a very important tool. There has been a lot of advocacy by civil society organizations to ensure that they speak with political parties and all of that. But that has not worked. So just like in Rwanda, where we have over 68% women in parliament, or in Uganda, where there are over 35% women, we will need to legislate. So we will need to legislate to be able to make that number. Or else it's going to be like, and you can see, the number is not getting better. As of 2019 rather, there were about 8 women at the Senate. Now, today, there are only just 4 that we have been able to record in this last election. And also at the House of Reps, we used to have about 23 in 2015. Now, in 2011, now what do we have? We have less than 15. I think there are just about 15 of them, that have been announced, that have been declared. So by and large, and if you look at the state of assemblies, also there are states, there are about 15 states where there is even no single woman in the parliament. So if you look at all that, then you know that the tide is strong against women, and of course, and you would expect that, a government that is committed to gender inclusion or should be able to take further steps, beyond. So we need to be intentional. We need to be intentional in ensuring that we increase the number. If we are not as a country, the situation is going to get worse in the coming election.
I find it interesting that we're seeing a reversal in the trend. And as you pointed out, less women now in the Senate, less women now as well as in the House of Representatives. What do you think is responsible for this decline? Is it something we can attribute to possibly pushback in some of the gains that women have been making in recent times? Is it just the normal ebb and pull of politics as it happens? Less interest? What do you think is responsible for what we're seeing?
Well, there are several things responsible. I've talked about the fact that we don't have the law that would help to ensure that political parties mandate in a mandatory fashion that the political party ensure that women are part of the number of candidates that they are bringing forward. But there are also other challenges that are there. There are cultural challenges. I go back to Binani. Binani's election also brought up some of those issues. So Binani was a former citizen, so it wasn't that she doesn't have the clout or the characteristic of what the other men have, and that's why it was actually a bit competitive, because she was a senator, she belongs to the Labour Party, but she also had a lot of issues. The issues with respect to our religion, the fact that what is the role of a woman when a woman becomes governor. I'm sure those who are accepted for her didn't vote for her because she's a woman. So, and those were also going on, before our election. We saw where they had brought a particular verse in Quran that says a woman cannot head, cannot be the head. So if she's the head, so it's going to be the religious head of the state. And people were saying that, Binani is supposed to just be political head and not the religious head. So, and these were issues that would not have become an issue if it was a man that was running against the man. So these are strong challenges, that women have found ways to break. The political party system, the structure is also not very friendly. How many political parties do we have women as the chairman of their political parties? Very few. How many women are even executive for political parties? They are also very few. So the system has not been favorable to women. So, and that's why when you get an opportunity that's close to it, people don't need to work that opportunity to push, that opportunity to do some. But, unfortunately, we have not been able to do that. But you can see why we lament about the long exclusion of women. We are also happy that also we have also females who are emerging as deputy governors. For example, in Adamawa also, there's a female deputy governor who has emerged with Governor Fintiri, which is also commendable, and she's going to be the first in the north part of Nigeria, the first female deputy governor. And so we've seen the one in Kaduna. We have also seen in quite a number of places, where female. So there are people today where they look very tough, and it's been a very long road, long process journey, we still hope that in the coming period we'll be able to also address some of these issues.
And I think it's also important when we have these conversations, particularly on women's political representation, that we also connect the dots as to what we as a country lose when we exclude women from being part and parcel of politics, particularly in elective positions. So Dr. Akiyode-Afolabi, I'd like you to talk on that very briefly before we wrap up. What are we losing as a country beyond the conversation around Adamawa, beyond Aisha Binani losing, but just the fact that we are still struggling to have more female politicians, more females in different elective positions? What do we lose as a country?
It's not economics, honestly speaking. It's not economics because if you are running a country with one leg, Nyeri was very clear. There's no way we can run the country with one leg and the country will be successful. So part of the challenges we are having with our economic growth as a country, why we have our GDP and all of that, it's also because we have not maximized the potential of the people in this country. So there is enough for us to gain if we have more women. It's going to increase our GDP, it's going to increase our economic growth, it's going to create a little role model for young women, and it's going to also help in a lot of inclusion issue. This country is going around without a sense of inclusion. Even with disability, young people, and that's why you can see the answer. That's why the young people feel so excluded, so marginalized. No country can continue in this century in this way. So it's important, and women cannot wait. We can't continue to wait because we have waited, and there's a lot of poverty in the land. There's insecurity of food. There's a lot of unemployment in the land, and we believe that having more open participation of men and women in if there's equal level of ground, that that is going to make a big difference.
All right, and finally, before I let you go, coming back to the Adamawa situation, the APC candidate did attempt to file a motion in the court, but the court declined. Do you think we should see a contestation of the final results, which declared Governor Fintiri as the winner for this election cycle?
Well, I can see that coming. Honestly speaking, I can see that coming because I know that even the March 18 election has been discussed severally, and there's likely going to be some contestation of that, but for now, he is the governor of the state, is been declared as the elected governor-elect for the next administration. But however, I don't think that will stop those who want to go to court from going to court. But I can see a lot of petitions, around that election. I think the election was a mouthful, so it will really lead to a lot of people challenging the election, which is normal. Which is normal. It's normal. It's good. We have about 1,000 petitions already. The KDI petition platform has shown that we have over 1,000 petitions, already. So we are going to see probably more with the Adamawa election.
All right, so we'll see how things do play out. Governor-elect is the incumbent governor, Governor Ahmadu Fintiri. He has been returned, but there are, of course, the controversies that continue to trail the Adamawa election, and we'll be following them very closely. Dr. Abiola Akiyode-Afolabi, election expert and founder of Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, thank you for joining me on Politics HQ.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
All right.